Please join me in welcoming Whitney.
I love reality TV. It started with American Idol. It then came to So You Think You Can Dance, Project Runway, and right now I especially like The Voice. Not ever having really been a big fan of People magazine, I wondered, what's up with this? Why do I care who the dancers are paired with each week? Why do I look forward to seeing what kind of clever dress the designers are going to construct with M&Ms and licorice? And why am I relieved when Adam Levine presses the button to save the singer who just lost in the last battle round? Yes, I really do like reality TV. You may be thinking, wow, that Whitney Johnson, she really needs to get a life. And perhaps I do, but I think there's a very sound basis for why I like these shows so much. The mythologist Joseph Campbell could have been writing about reality TV when he described the archetypal hero's journey. A hero ventures forth from the world of common day into a region of supernatural wonder. There, fabulous forces are encountered and a decisive victory is won. The hero returns from the mysterious adventure with the power to bestow boons upon her fellow man. Isn't that what happens in reality TV? Right before our very eyes are people hoping to be called to adventure, to win a decisive victory, to obtain the boon. And as we watch them, we feel as if there are pieces of ourselves mirrored in the contestants, as if somehow we too are on a hero's journey. When I graduated from college, I hadn't yet learned to become the hero of my story. My parents were still very much the gatekeepers of my dreams. They were pretty emphatic about what I could and couldn't do, about what I should major in, who I should marry. I listened to them about my major, I didn't about who I married. In a way, this was my first big call to adventure, making one of the most important life decisions by myself. My call to adventure continued 2 years later when my husband and I arrived in New York City so he could pursue his PhD at Columbia University. I'll confess, I was terrified. I would never have gone to New York on my own. I'd heard all sorts of stories about how people were going to cut off my fingers in order to get my wedding ring. I still have all 10 fingers, but we frequently heard gunshots at night. For the first week, I wouldn't go anywhere by myself. But eventually I had to go out and look for a job because we needed to put food on the table. We were in New York, so I wanted to work on Wall Street. But as a music major, I'd never set foot in an accounting or finance course. Plus, I had no connections. I was shy in confidence. Women who went to Wall Street in the late 80s who could type fast started as secretaries. So that's what I did. Now, I want you to picture this. I had a desk. It was a working girl-ish type desk, and across from that desk was a bullpen, which was essentially a locker room of 20-something guys, all aspiring to become masters of the universe if only they could open one more account. But it was a tough slog. They'd dial the phone, people would hang up. They'd dial the phone, people would hang up. When they'd finally get someone on the line, the pressure was so intense in this testosterone-filled room that they would inevitably go for the hard sell. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that this is a great stock. And throw down your pom-poms and get in the game. At first, I was offended because I was a cheerleader in high school. But after hearing, throw down your pom-poms yet one more time, I thought, I need to throw down my pom-poms and get in my game. My husband's PhD is going to take 5 to 7 years. Don't I want to do something a little bit more challenging? And why would I make X if 10X is a possibility? That was the beginning of my call to the Wall Street adventure. I began taking accounting and finance courses at night. After 3 years of hard work and a little luck, I had a boss who believed in me. I was eventually able to move up the food chain from secretary to an investment banker. Several years later, after having my first child, I became an equity analyst. Then 15 years into the journey, having become a #1 analyst, when Wall Street was no longer my dream, I quit my job and began to embark on a new journey. In part, my motivation was my children. I wanted to focus more on the art of mothering, be a part of their lives. They were then 5 and 9 respectively. Once I was no longer working 80+ hours a week, I had time to talk to my friends, friends of friends, daughters of friends. I began to ask them, what is your dream? I was surprised when I heard, I'm not sure I have a dream, or I don't know how to do my dream, and frequently there was an unspoken I'm not sure it's my privilege to dream. How could this be? These were supremely capable women. How could they not see the possibilities for themselves that I saw? I knew I had to do something to build a case, to persuade them to dream. And I suppose to also define the process for myself and to be certain that this thing that I had done in New York wasn't just a one-off. So I started a blog. I wanted my blog to be a place where women could refresh, reboot, reinforce their belief that dreaming is their birthright and that they are meant to be the hero of their story. Here are just 2 reasons why it's imperative that we dare to dream. Number 1, we dream in order to make meaning of our lives. My parents married because my mother was pregnant with me. When I was 17, they divorced. I have wondered, would they have married if she hadn't been pregnant? Even decades after the fact, it is painful for me to think about this. And yet, some of my greatest strengths and biggest dreams were born of that sadness. My desire to have a happy marriage and family is resolute. When someone I know is affected by divorce, I know how heartbreaking and complicated it can be, regardless of the why. My desire to achieve my ambition is likely a means of trying to measure up, and I'm quite sure that my intense focus on encouraging others is an attempt to be the encouraging voice I wanted to hear when I was young. When we dream, we invoke a source of power, a power to make meaning of our lives. We also dream in order to grow up. According to Jungian psychologist Whitney Johnson, every woman and man comes equipped with a psychological structure that includes qualities characterized as feminine and masculine. Our capacity for relatedness and love is feminine, while our ability to wield power and control situations is masculine. In order to become a complete person, we need to develop both. This, however, will not be easy. Even as society criticizes women for our desire to nurture and be a safe harbor, it also shames us for wanting to go out and chart unnavigated waters. 6 months after I'd arrived in New York, I now had a job and a little bit of money. One evening, I was in Lincoln Center waiting for the train with several friends, and I began to enthusiastically describe a film I had just seen. One of the women who was listening to me, who had several children, her husband was in school, she was a few years younger, she looked at me and declared imperiously, "Whitney, you really do need to start having children." This, I think, sums it up nicely. Society doesn't typically require men to make a choice between being a ship and a harbor. The first priority for a man is to be a ship, and the more he can delegate the harbor aspect to someone else, whether a wife or frequently a secretary, the better. Because women simultaneously feel the tug of our ship full of dreams, even as we try to keep one foot grounded on the dock of family life, our choices can feel Solomonic. I've wondered if our conflicting feelings of ambition and loyalty are what have given rise to the tremendously destructive mommy wars. The more we dig in our insecure heels about the rightness of our choices, the more we memorialize a false either-or paradigm that prevents us from doing the dreaming required in order to become a complete woman, to learn to love and wield power, to be a harbor and a ship. Only when we do dream our own dreams can we grow up. The second piece of the framework is to dream. The best dreams aren't off the rack, they're tailor-made, based on our innate talents and our feminine strengths, etc. Now, our innate talents are a wellspring of dreams, but they can actually be pretty difficult to identify because they involve doing something reflexively well, so much so that we often breeze over them, even dismiss them. A great example of this is Lenola Kathleen Stone. As she tried to maintain a marriage to an abusive man, the images in her mind and heart that she had always relied on as part of her gift for photography vanished. When she finally divorced and began to build her new life, the images reappeared. Kathleen now validates these creative promptings, each and every one, which she credits as key for her completing graduate school, having her work shown at Art Basel Miami, and completing her first book. Another place to mine for our dream is in our cache of feminine strengths. Relatedness and nurturing are huge assets, but because these strengths tend to be less visible, they can be unacknowledged and undervalued. Let me illustrate. Professional basketball player Shane Battier has been described as a no-stats all-star, a replaceable cog in the machine of his team. In fact, this photo says it all. When you Google him, you get lots of shots of the back of his head taking on some of the biggest dogs in the game, like Kobe Bryant. There are very few shots of him head-on. And yet Michael Lewis, best known as author of The Blind Side and Liar's Poker, had this to say about Battier. When he's on the court, his teammates get better, often a lot better, and his opponents get worse, often a lot worse. Every team Shane has ever played on has the magical ability to win because he helps the team in all sorts of subtle, hard-to-measure ways. We call him Lego because when he's on the court, the pieces fit together. Couldn't that be said about women? No one knows exactly what you do, but when you're around, things seem to work. Society has actually taught us to idealize the masculine traits of power and achieving at the expense of feminine values. As a consequence, many women have spent their lives in a constant state of inferiority as no-stats all-stars because to be feminine was second best. I believe that our most remarkable dreams will happen not in spite of, but because of our feminine strengths. Rachel Cook was working as a futures trader in Chicago when she read an op-ed by Nicholas Kristof of the New York Times about microfinance, inspired by the stories of how these mini loans could dramatically change the lives of women in the developing world, and simultaneously outraged by the sexism that she experienced on the trading floor, she decided to quit her job and produce a documentary. Leveraging her background in theater and film, and raising money from private investors, Kickstarter, and exhausting her life savings, she has produced a film that she believes will make a difference for women around the world. When women champion a cause, tectonic shifts can result as we draw on our feminine and masculine strengths. You've dared to accept the call to adventure. Now it's time to do. Doing our dream is a discovery-driven process, one that involves doing what I call dating dreams. When we date dreams, we give ourselves permission to try something that may seem too bold, too far-fetched, or just plain too scary. Because when we date, especially speed date, there's a no commitment clause. For example, I wanted to learn to sing. To date this dream, I didn't have to quit my job or apply to music school. I just had to take a few voice lessons. And it's a good thing because even though I really wanted to date singing, it didn't really want to date me. As my voice teacher said, I'm sure there's a vibrato in there somewhere. As we date various dreams, we eventually find the dreams that we want to commit to for the long run and those that can commit to us. Erin Newkirk has always loved to write letters on fine, beautiful stationery. After the birth of her first child and a devastating diagnosis for her dad's health, she felt overwhelmed and, as a consequence, out of touch with her friends and loved ones. The desire to strengthen her relationships and help others do the same was the impetus for the launch of Red Stamp, an online reminder service mixed with high-end occasion cards. This was 2004. As Red Stamp grew, the business discovered its way to being more about fine paper and cards, or the accoutrements of correspondence, which she came to realize was missing the point. As Erin refocused on making it easier for people to connect to loved ones and utilized mobile technology, which was now available, Red Stamp has evolved into an easy way to send cards not only via paper mail, but also email, text message, Facebook, and Twitter. Earlier this year, Red Stamp was a finalist in the Martha Stewart Made in America Awards, and it is a top 1% app in the iTunes Store. As we discover our way to our dreams and to who we are, we can't see the end from the beginning, which means we'll probably end up in a place that we hadn't anticipated, but we won't be alone. 90% of all college graduates end up with a major different from the one they started with, and 70% of all successful businesses end up with a strategy different from the one they initially pursued. But here's the thing. In order to arrive at who we are, we must suit up and show up. like when my friend sent me a link for a contest sponsored by Oprah. The prize was your own talk show. I immediately was thrilled with that fear that I feel when I know I must take something on, and more immediately, ASAP immediately, I began to explain to myself why this audition was a no-go. I'd have to take a day off from running the fund, head down to New York, get up at 3 in the morning in order to be one of the first 500 people in line, fill out a lengthy application, and I would have to submit myself to the humiliation of a cattle call in a Kohl's parking lot in New Jersey. And yet, wasn't it my dream to help other people dream? If I had a talk show, wouldn't I have a bigger platform expanding and multiplying my dream? And haven't I always loved to interview people, ask them questions, hear their stories? And wasn't it enough that I just wanted to do this? With a gentle nudge from one of my closest friends, Liz Economy, on whom the irony was not lost that I was struggling to walk my talk, I suited up at 3 a.m. to my dream. As you may have surmised, I didn't win my own talk show. I didn't even make it past the first cut. My ego and feelings were bruised. I was sad. I cried, and I was sad some more. But then I recovered because there was sadness, but there were no regrets because I had suited up, I'd shown up, and I had taken my dream on. The poet Mary Oliver wrote, "One day you finally knew what you had to do and began. Though the voices around you kept shouting their bad advice, but little by little, as you left their voices behind, the stars began to burn through the sheets of clouds, and there was a new voice which you slowly recognized as your own, that kept you company as you strode deeper and deeper into the world, determined to do the only thing you could do, determined to save the only life you could save." When we dare, we are invited to dream again and again. When we dream, we become the hero of our story. When we do, remarkable things can happen. Thank you.